Hello, welcome to Future Baroque Music. This is episode 2 of the Creative Synthesizer Songwriting Seminar. We need to talk about gear. If we're making DAW-less electronic music, we're going to be nerds for synthesizers, samplers, drum machines. I've got a rack mixer here, filters, delay, all kinds of cool stuff. Stereo looping, MIDI synced, all right. Now, the gear we own, of course it matters, but I find that the way that you interconnect the pieces, the way you think about the sound and the MIDI routing, and also physically what you can reach sort of standing within your preferred spot, or maybe you have 2 or 3 different sort of workstation places where you can reach different things and do different things at a time, that all really informs kind of how you can flow and make music with these metal boxes with a bunch of knobs and sliders on them. So we need to think about the human element of how can I interact with this. And for me, everything I've done has been to fit all my gear inside this single box. And if it doesn't fit, I need to take something out. It's got a sliding shelf, as you can see, for a few things that were not rackable. 10 rack on the front, 10 rack on the back, 12 on the top. Everything powers on from that single power conditioner. The MIDI from my sequencer goes to this MIDI Solutions T8 rack, and all the MIDI goes everywhere. So I do have 2 microphones. One is for just regular sound, and that goes to the preamp on top. One is for the vocoder. The vocoder's been relegated to the back because I am completely out of space, and like I said, it's hard to decide what you need to have within your arm's reach. So everything else that's over here, this is all input and recording stuff, and I don't actually need it for the core function of making music. I've got control surface, I've got the keyboards, I've got drum pads, I even have MIDI guitar. All of that is for the writing stage, and if I go and perform, I could bring the guitar. I will probably bring the microphones because I like to do vocoding stuff, but none of it is necessary. This is really the heart and the soul of what I do here in the studio. So I'm going to explode it a little bit. I'll take some pieces out. We can discuss them individually, and we'll take a look at the different sort of routing possibilities and the different ways that we could interconnect things to have a really fun sort of flowing music writing experience. Yeah, let's get into it. Now, you have to be a little bit obsessive about this like me in order to spend 12 hours rewiring your synth rig just so you can have 2 devices in different locations so it's more comfortable when you stand there and play. I really need the JP-8080 and the MicroQ. There's my 2 main synths just right there in front of me, and I have the Waldorf here, so that's really, the synthesizers need to be right under my fingers. So, in order to do this, first, we gotta make a little map, make sure I know how many rack units everything takes to see how they can fit. Some things are 2 units, some are 1, so that changes what I can actually kind of do. We'll rough everything in so that, you should stand there and be like, is this comfortable? Can I actually reach that knob the way I thought I could? And just be like, all right, this is gonna be what it is. And then we put them in layer by layer. We have to do a kind of triple puzzle of the power cabling comes from the power conditioner to everything, the MIDI comes from the engine to the T8 to everything, and the audio cabling, which sort of interconnects a number of different things and has to end up at the mixer for everything. And then there's 2 sort of effects loop schemes that are independent of each other. One's coming from the looper and one's coming from the effects send on the rack mixer. So we hope to get, 5 to 10% more ease and fun when we're playing with this afterwards. So one more thing to keep in mind, anything to do with this shelf has to have slack built into it, and we have to sort of cleverly loop things and make sure that these things don't have bits hanging down that will catch on it. So that's just a little bit of an extra challenge. And this will give us an opportunity to see everything, take it all out, show you all the cabling, the wiring that goes into it, and then, dear God, I hope we can get it all put back together in, say, 2 days of filming here. So, let's go. Okay, firstly, let's talk about the engine. The social entropy engine, this is the device I have to send notes and controller information. So I can sequence automation, which I usually don't, or I can sequence notes. So I have 8 different tracks, which correspond to different instruments that I have in the rack. And they go out on different channels through the MIDI Solutions T8 and go to their appropriate device. We've got our 16 steps here, times 4, tempo knob, and most crucially, CV and MIDI out on the back. 2 different MIDI outs for flexible routing, USB for backing up patterns. This does not function as a MIDI interface for your DAW. That's not what it's designed to do. This is a performance sequencer, really through and through in its DNA. Clever device because it uses function buttons to access many different parameters. So these 8 are your 8 tracks, but it's also an octave of a keyboard. You can perform in notes using this little built-in thing. You can see my little list of the drum instruments. So they also function as the 8 different drum pads times 2. You have 2 banks of 8. So every button kind of does 3 or more things, which helps, once you learn it, to be very fast and very flexible. Next up is Waldorf Rocket. This is a category that I've always maintained from the very beginning, monophonic bass synth. You need something for the low end. You're only going to need 1 note at a time. You need some quick tone controls. When I started this project at the dawn of time, my friend had a Moog. This is a replacement that served me very well. It doesn't have a lot of tonal variety, but it does for its size and price point. So let's take a little closer look. So Waldorf kind of short-circuited a lot of typical synth functions. You still get your filter controls, you get your oscillator controls, but they did multi-function knobs, very simple envelope, like more envelope, less envelope, great. And of course the ultimately bizarre decision to put a headphone knob on a monophonic bass synth, a headphone knob for a monophonic bass synth, and there's no volume control. What? This should be a familiar piece of gear to many of us. The Strymon Timeline. When Strymon burst onto the scene with this box, I fell absolutely in love with the company. Really powerful DSP advancements, so it's got the 12 different delay models and lots of like cool controls over it. It's got a little looper implementation built in. You can do stereo, you can do ascend return or true stereo in and out. It's got MIDI, so again, you can control parameters with your MIDI controllers. It's really got everything you need to have a flexible sort of sound design process with the unit. And some of the models are just great. Some I never use, but some are amazing. And I'll probably end up getting a Night Sky or one of those other things. So this is my everything delay, and I can always find a sound that will suit what I need, from a short kind of slappy bucket to like long psychedelic filter delays. I've had this for over 10 years. It gets the job done. Here's the Abbey Road Chamber Verb. It has just a beautiful sound, and it gives me the depth and spaciousness I need. It's got some tone controls to filter on how much high end, so I can really dial in a nice dark vocal plate reverb. And it is mono, and it sits right in the center of the mix. So these 2 things are on sends. Okay, so underneath the shelf, there's a couple more things. This is the Electrix MoFX. Now I have this only processing the output from the loops. And that's because my effects send is pre-loop. So guitar, voice, I can put synthesizers through it if I want. And that goes into one world of effects. Things that I loop and then reproduce, I want it to be able to control independently and have a kind of a different sound. So I'll be singing something and it goes through these effects, and then suddenly it's looped and it's going through these effects, which is like a nice sort of way of handling the sonic layering, that whatever comes out of the loops will sound different and have a different place. It's a flanger, a tremolo, and a delay in 3 separate modules with a sort of distortion front end. And the cool thing about it is you can set crossovers on each effect. So it's got 3 bands, and you can basically have it affect the top, the middle, the bottom band, or any combination thereof. So you can really dial in these kind of tonal controls using the effects without having to have like a whole EQ rack. So that's down here because the bit set and forget. I turn on what I want for the given song, for the loop effects, and I leave it. So here's my second main synth, the Waldorf MicroQ. And today I'm going to move it out of the spot because I absolutely hate having it down by my knees. I always need to do more with it, and I have to crouch down here and be like, do. Now, it's pretty easy to edit. I think it's reasonably well designed. You can read all the labels of everything, so there's no like menu structure that's in your head and you have to page through and find it. So it's all right here, and then these knobs control the parameters within those categories. So it's pretty easy to do, but I really need it up in front of me so that I can do more regular kind of patch changing. And then I have the Alesis D4 in here, which I'll have to pull out and get into a better shot for us to see. So that's the front. Here we have the Electrix Filter Factory. Now this was another one of the pieces that I lusted for probably decades. The friendly sort of huge knob design, you can momentarily, like, it's on with these buttons, or you can leave it on and switch it off. It's got a simple LFO built in. You can control like well enough how long it should take within a measure or over multi-measures, different waveforms of LFO. You can mix it, of course, but it's nice to have buzz, which is of course distortion. They put distortion on the front end of everything just to give you grunge. And so it can be really effective if you're going to be like taking your drums and going like that's it. You can go nice little moves like that. This is only processing my percussion sounds from the sampler. So everything that's sampled percussion or live played percussion goes through here, and it's dedicated to that. This is a really cheap, simple preamp, the DPS2. I've got guitar on one side and voice on the other side. We've got some sort of tonal characteristics that we can control. It's got tubes in it, so it really does slam the tubes nicely, and I use this as essentially a compressor. Like, yes, it's a preamp, but I use it because it has tube compression, and I can really dial in the presence of my voice on the guitar. Now, I'm very lucky because this is another piece of Electrix gear. As you can see, I have almost the full collection. These are more or less impossible to find now. And I got one that had a modification done. You can't use the instrument input, but the noise is lower. So it's a 4-track MIDI synced looper, records to CF cards, this is a crazy piece of gear. You can tap a tempo in, you can detect beats just from playing, or you can do it on MIDI, which is what I do. So, as you can see, the tempo will follow, and it will quantize. So if I hit record, 3, 4, 5, So it's using musical beat timing. And even if my button presses are slightly imprecise, it's going to quantize to the nearest tick, quarter note, whatever you specify. You can even set up different time signatures in here so that it knows how many bars and beats in musical time that you're trying to make. Very, very, very super useful. You can pan the different tracks. You can even have pitch control in real time using a MIDI keyboard, so I can do some fun repitching stuff. And you can chain loops together, so there's different slots. So I could have 4 tracks of loops and have various things happening, which I mix up and down as I want. And then you can chain the loops together, so you could have different sections. You could have a loop for every section of your song and go back and forth. And also, interestingly, is I could run this so that I have effects inserts. I could run the MoFX off this insert. Generally, I choose not to, and we'll get into that later with some of the routing. So finally, and probably the least important piece of gear I have, to be honest, is the MX822. I needed a mixer that had stereo, so each channel has stereo inputs, a rudimentary effects send, and of course a master out. So the way I have it patched is the reverb is coming back on the effects return to specify how much I want there, and then I have my delay coming into an expansion port, so I control the volume of the delay on the delay itself. This is very, very handy to just have here. Okay. Now here we have the centerpiece of my sound. I'm actually really bummed they reissued because for a while it was unobtainium to get the actual JP-8080 with the super saw. That's the one we want, right? Now, this is an amazing synth because in the midst of the 80s, right when everybody was making horrible menu diving nonsense, they basically made a synth where they put almost everything on top. There's only a few things that aren't, and those are easily gotten through these buttons here. Most of the parameters are right here on the front, and especially if you're learning synthesis, having a filter envelope with the picture right here and all the sliders right in front of you all the time is exactly what you want. So when I was 19, I fell in love with the JP-8000 because my friend had it, and I was so envious, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And when I went to getting my stuff, I realized I needed racks, and I found the 8080. It's also got an extra vocoder. So this comes from my world of rack effects, and it's going to go in here, so I can triple vocoder. You already saw the red one that's on the back. Then I've got this, and the MicroQ can also do its own vocoding. So I am spoiled for choice when it comes to vocoding. So this is my track 1, track 2 main melody sounds. I use it as 2 separate synths because it really is. You have the lower and the upper, the way that Roland always does this. So, you know, you can massively layer. So the lower has 2 oscillators, right? This one and this one. And so does the upper, but I like to keep them separate. And I'll use the upper voice for harmony, and I use the lower voice for melody frequently with the legato. And it's got morphing, so it can do evolving soundscapes. You can even control and record certain parameters. So if I wanted to do this motion control, I could have recorded sort of a custom set of movements of the filter, the envelopes, the effects, anything. And that can go in that slot. So if you have a preset kind of evolution of your sound, you can actually store them here, which is really meta and really cool. There's an SD card for backing up sounds, but I keep my guitar picks there. Very good. Okay, so I think I've settled on a layout that's going to be fun. It's got some improvements. So, what has changed? JP-8080 still in the front, filter factory, loops. We added the MicroQ. It's tilted a little so I can see the LCD screen. I have to push in this drawer all the way to really reach it, but I only need to physically touch the rack when I'm editing my presets or doing sound design things in general, so that's fine. The drawer itself is unchanged. We've got the sequencer at the very front. It's a primary interaction piece for the whole kit. And then the bass, which I'm always touching right behind it. The timeline delay, which I'm always altering and adjusting. And the reverb's just tucked in behind, which I don't need to touch that often. Now, here's the interesting part. I added a second mixer to complement the main mixer on the front. So I had this thought I would submix some things, maybe both the D4 sampler and extra drum samples, possibly even the loop output, and then smash them all through the filter factory. So I'd have control over half the ensemble on a single filter, which would be really cool and allow me to do a lot of sort of builds and drops quite easily without having to try to put my hands on 3 or 4 pieces of gear. There's a lot of potential there. We can submix anything to anything. So my intention is to roughen the power and the MIDI, and then I'll write a nice detailed chart of how the interconnections should or could work. It's going to be fun. The only thorn in my side really is this piece of plastic. It's really only suitable to be pads. Unfortunately, right now it's also playing samples for me. So I need another device, maybe a small sample player that can tuck onto this shelf at the back